Welcome to Đồng Radio and Television Stations. Here come to news today. The fourth wave of the COVID-19 is developing complicatedly in the second half of this year, with economic growth reached over 6% as planned. According to the General Statistics Office, GDP in the first 6 months of 2021 increased by 5.64%, higher than the growth rate of the same period in 2020. Although lower than the target, this is still a positive growth compared to last year. The complicated pandemic situation, especially in the major economic center of Ho Chi Minh City and the neighboring provinces, is a big challenge for the economic growth from now until the end of the year. In the last 6 months of the year, more than 80% of enterprises says that the rate of the new export orders increase or remain the same, not decrease. In general, although the growth forecast is affected by the pandemic, most international organizations estimate that Vietnam's GDP this year is still above 6%, in line with the government's goal set as follows from 6 to 6.5%. Considering the proposal of the Ministry of Health on allowing the pilot implementation of F1 isolation at home, Deputy Prime Minister Vũ Đức Đam has agreed on the implementation as much ensure safety. According to the guideline of the Ministry of Health, people who are subject to F1 isolated at home must be sampled for the SARS-CoV-2 test at least 5 times since the start of the quarantine on the first day, the 7th day, the 14th day, the 20th day, and the 28th day. The Ministry of Health requires people isolated at home not to leave the isolation room during the quarantine period, do not come into contact with family members as well as other people. The place of isolation is a separate house. In front of the house, there is a warning sign on the red background with the yellow letters. Medical isolation place to prevent and control the COVID-19 pandemic must have separate isolation room, ensure self-contained, have a toilet, a separate bathroom, have enough personal hygiene tools, hand soap, clean water, hand sanitizer. There are personal thermometers in the room. According to the draft pilot plan to welcome international tourists to Phú Quốc that the Ministry of Culture, Sport and Tourism sent to relevant units for comments, it is forecasted to welcome about 2,000 to 3,000 international tourists a month in Phase 1, welcome to 3,000 to 5,000 international tourists a month in Phase 2, and it is expected that in 6 months of piloting, 25,000 to 40,000 international tourists will come to Phú Quốc starting from October 2021. The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism will assume the crime responsibility for and coordinate with concerned ministry and branches in selecting international tourist markets which from countries and territories in pilot phase with potential safe high level in the prevention and control of the COVID-19 pandemic in some areas such as Northeast Asia, Europe, America, Middle East, Australia. U.S. President Joe Biden on July 13 emphasized the national urgency to pass the sweeping election bills proposed by Democrats, which have been stalled in the Congress due to the opposition from the Republican Party. Speaking in Philadelphia, President Biden criticized efforts to undermine the right to vote, linking those efforts to pass laws that prevent people of color and women from voting in the United States. According to the President Biden, since the beginning of the year, 17 U.S. states has enacted 80 new laws that make it harder for people to vote, not to mention the nearly 400 audition bills that Republicans in the state legislatures are seeking to pass. However, President Biden insists his administration will respond strongly. Earlier, many Republican-controlled states passed laws restricting voting or changing election rules after former President Donald Trump climbed fourth in the 2020 election. Cuba Interior Ministry confirmed on July 13 that 1 person was killed in the chaos that turned violent in the country, which broke out 2 days ago. According to the state's news agency Granada Latina, a 36-year-old man was killed while taking part in a disruptive incident. The Cuban Interior Ministry requests for his loss during the deployment in the Guinea area on the outskirts of Havana. Earlier, speaking on the national television, Cuban President Diaz-Canel planned a decades-long U.S. economic embargo on the curse of the departments, calling its policy economic strangulation, and suggested that a social media campaign is using the issues as a weapon against the government. Cuba experienced its worst economic crisis in decades as a result of the sanctions under former U.S. President Donald Trump. That's all on the news today. Thanks for watching us. Have a good time. Goodbye.